is going to be about the role of the Torah in Jewish mysticism and in the mystical life itself. People may see the Torah as, in some sense, God's word, and as an approach to the sacred, but it is also commonly understood to be a document which is at least mediated through human beings. The sages of past centuries and Orthodox Jews today did read it as the literal word of God, along with many interpretations that were known and also interpretations yet to be uncovered. The Kabbalists understood it to convey even more. We've seen how symbols play an important part in the Zohar. So don't be surprised that the Zohar interprets both the laws and the stories of the Torah as having mystical meaning, symbolic meaning. For the mystics, everything has a symbolic meaning. Every action has a larger significance. And events in the Torah, conversations within the Torah, are also reinterpreted as referring to the processes within the Sfirot. Now, one of the things you have to understand about Jewish mysticism in general is that mystical life always has in it some potential for a rebellion against any system of law. Because if you have a direct line to God, if you can just kind of check in with God, and God will tell you what God wants. So why do you need the Torah? What do you need the law for? That's, it's true that a direct line could be corrupted, but still, right? And I mentioned in my book about, how you could play, if you've ever played the game telephone, where you whisper one message to one person, and then that person whispers it to another person, and so on and so on and so forth. By the time you get through 15, 20 people, the telephone message gets changed along the way, right? So, yeah, there is the possibility of a message being corrupted. But still, if people feel that they have a direct line to God, they may reasonably say, what do I need the Torah for? God himself will tell me what I need to do. So next year, when we deal with the issue of messianism, we will talk a little bit about that tendency that runs against keeping the law among the mystics. For the most part, Jewish mystics were very, very loyal to the established law, even if they understood the meaning of the law different from the rest of the Jews. They reinterpreted many laws, many practices, but they kept the practices themselves. After all, the law has, an infinite number of meanings. As we like to say, Shivim Panim La Torah. There are 70 faces to the Torah, which is a gentle way of saying that really there are an infinite number of possible interpretations of the Torah. But they may have felt the pressure to be obedient to the community and its practices at large. So they kept the practices, but reinterpreted the meaning. Right? This text that we're going to look at today, it's a very lengthy episode from the Zohar, and I have abridged it considerably for your enjoyment. Trust me, to take the original version would take weeks and weeks, and not just 1 hour a week. But this episode is a great illustration of this principle of how the mystics reinterpreted the law. So it deserves a lot of attention. The whole passage is called Sava de Mishpatim, the old man who expounds on the verses of Parshat Mishpatim.
Rabbi, you are not sharing your screen, you know.
Well, I probably should do that, shouldn't I?
Well, you were talking like you thought we could see what you were talking about.
I do think that I mean, I'm getting video.
No, I see your picture. I do not see the text that you have up.
Well, I'll put it up there.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't mean to.
Yeah, no, that's not a problem. Okay, so this is Sava de Mishpatim. We're not going to see too much about Parshat Mishpatim, but you'll see the beginning and bits and pieces from the middle and the end. So here's the text. One night, Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yossi met at the Tower of Tyre. They lodged there, delighting in each other. Rabbi Yossi said, "How happy I am to see the face of Shekhinah. For just now, the whole way here, I was pestered by an old man, a donkey driver, who kept asking me riddles the whole way. What is a serpent that flies in the air and wanders alone while an ant lies comfortably between its teeth? Beginning in union, it ends in separation. What is an eagle that nests in a tree that never was? Its young, plundered, though not by created creatures. Ascending they descend, descending they ascend, two who are one and one who is three. Who is a beautiful maiden without eyes, her body concealed and revealed. She emerges in the morning and is concealed by day, adorning herself with adornments that are not. All this he asked on the way, and boy, was I annoyed. But now that I'm with you, I can relax. You know, if we had been together, we would have engaged in words of Torah instead of other words of chaos." Rabbi Chia said, "That old donkey driver, do you know anything about him?" He answered, "I know that his words have no substance. For if he knew anything, he would have opened with Torah, and the way would not have been empty." Rabbi Chia said, "That donkey driver, is he here? For sometimes in those empty ones, you may discover bells of gold." He said to him, "Here he is, getting fodder ready for his donkey." They called him and he came over to them. He said, "Now 2 are 3 and 3 are like 1. Rabbi Yossi said, "Didn't I tell you that all his words are empty and inane?" Okay, so let me stop here and offer some commentary on some of this. When he starts out, Rabbi Yossi says, "How happy I am to see the face of Shekhinah." There are many teachings in the rabbinic tradition that suggest that one who welcomes the wise or one who welcomes one's friend is considered to be welcoming the Shekhinah. But in spite of being happy to see Rabbi Chia, he's irritated because he's had to travel with this guy, this donkey driver, who seems to be speaking in silly riddles and he seems to be an ignoramus. Right? He would much have preferred to speak of elevated matters which might have evoked the presence of the Shekhinah. We're not going to talk about most of these first two riddles, except to say that they refer to stages in the process of reincarnation, which is a subject very important to many Kabbalists, and we will get to that next year. Rabbi Chia is more hesitant to assume very much about this donkey driver. You know, he might have bells of gold. Bells of gold is one of those code phrases which refers to concealed wisdom. Now, the high priest, Aaron, wore bells of gold on his robe. In rabbinic texts, bells also serve as a hint of revelation. Okay? And then he says, now 2 are 3 and 3 are like 1. So that's the solution to the last part of the second riddle that the old man mentioned. The 2 become 3 and 3 are like one group joined together. It's almost as if the donkey driver knew that this conversation would take place, but Rabbi Yossi still doesn't get it. He doesn't recognize anything special about this character. So here we are. Questions or comments up to here? All right, let's go a little farther then. He sat before them and said, Rabbis, I have become a donkey driver only a short time ago. Before, I wasn't one. But I have a son, and I put him in school. I want him to engage in Torah. When I find one of the rabbis traveling on the road, I guide his donkey from behind. Today, I thought that I would hear new words of Torah, but I haven't heard anything. Rabbi Yossi said, of all the words I heard you say, there was one that really amazed me. Either you said it out of folly or they are empty words. The old man said, and which one is that? He said, the one about the beautiful maiden. The old man opened and said, God is with me, I have no fear. What can any human do to me? God is with me, helping me. It is good to take refuge in God. How fine, lovely, and precious and sublime are words of Torah. But should I say them in the presence of those from whose mouths until now I have not heard a single word? But I should speak, because there is no shame at all in saying words of Torah in the presence of anyone. So, 2 words up to here. We learn that the donkey driver has recently been reincarnated into this job. And perhaps that, knowing that, along with the caution of Rabbi Chia, moves Rabbi Yossi to ask about this rabbi's riddle, this old man's riddle. The old man, perhaps surprisingly to Rabbi Yossi, is a little reluctant to talk about this, right? He doesn't know them. He doesn't know, they may be rabbis, but he doesn't know if they're really prepared for this mystical wisdom. And another interesting thing about the language of this, where it says, the old man opened. This is a frequent phrase in the Zohar. Usually in the Talmud or in the Midrash, one of the sages says, or one of the sages speaks. Here, the sage opens. He opens his discourse, and that suggests the opening of something that has been concealed. It's almost like you're opening the shade to let in the light. And that is very much in the spirit of the explanation that you're going to see here. Right? Questions or comments up to here? Everybody okay so far? All right, everybody fasten your seatbelts. Everybody hold on. And forward we go. The old man covered himself. He opened and said, Moses went inside the cloud and ascended the mountain. What is this cloud? The one of which it is written, I set my bow in the cloud. We've learned that the rainbow removed her garments and gave them to Moses. Wearing that garment, Moses went up the mountain. From within it, he saw what he saw, delighting in all until here. The comrades came and fell down before him. And weeping, they said, if we have come into the world just to hear these words from your mouth, it is enough for us. The old man said, companions, not for this alone did I begin to speak. For an old man like me doesn't rattle or call with just a single word. Human beings are so confused in their minds. They do not see the path of truth in Torah. Torah calls out to them every day, cooing, yet they do not want to turn their heads. Even though I said that a word of Torah emerges from her sheath, is seen for a moment, then quickly hides away. That is certainly so. But when she reveals herself from her sheath and quickly hides, she does so only for those who know her and recognize her. Okay, so a few thoughts about this up to here. Some of you may remember.
The secrets have to be unveiled layer by layer.
Yes, yes. And that's what's going to happen. Right? You might remember when we were looking at mystical texts from the Talmud last fall. There was a passage about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. And there's a parallel passage that we didn't look at back then from the Babylonian Talmud. And there, where the student begins to teach, the master not only dismounts from his donkey, but he also wraps himself up in a cloak. And here when the old man, it says the old man covers himself. That may be an allusion to the earlier text, suggesting that this was a practice that, you know, before you revealed mystical wisdom, you had to, you know, put on this garment. You had to wrap yourself up in something almost as if you were, you know, concealing a little bit of yourself. So the old man mentions this verse. He talks about the cloud into which Moses went when he went up the mountain to receive the Torah. And if you look at the beginning of Ezekiel, which, by the way, this was the Haftarah for Friday, the first chapter of Ezekiel, the divine glory is compared to the appearance of the rainbow in the cloud on a rainy day. So some commentators see the rainbow as representing the Shekhinah. Sfirot, we've seen, are associated with different colors. And so the rainbow of Shekhinah is understood as being a path to the Sfirot above. And so similarly, in this view, Moses is seen as going up into the cloud to experience the delights of the higher levels of the Sfirot. Right?
Is the Shekhinah female?
Yes,
So that's
generally.
why it's referring to her garments, even though she's giving it to a man.
Well, the garments are referred, they may refer to different levels of Torah. Right? At least that is, one understanding of this.
Why is it feminine garments for a rainbow though? That's the part.
Because it could be talking about Torah. Torah is seen as feminine.
I see.
Right?
Are there two different types of garments and two different explanations? One being to shield the essence of the Sefirot and the Ein Sof, so that we don't, or whoever is traveling doesn't see too much at one time, and the other to protect themselves from the intensity of the Sefirot and the Ein Sof?
I think both of those would be legitimate ways of looking at it. Either way, you need some protection. Right? So there are commentators on this who see the rainbow as representative of the Sphira of Yesod. Right? Now, Yesod, remember, represents or is likened to the genital organs. Right? The rainbow is often seen as kind of a muted phallic symbol. Okay? Or it could be the Sphira of Tiferet descending to Yesod, wrapped within the cloud of Shekhinah. And Moses is the facilitator for the union of Tiferet and Shekhinah, which by now we understand that that's really what it's all about. That's what needs to be accomplished through any mitzvah, and certainly through contact with the Torah. So Moses helps to facilitate that union. And his garments are also kind of a protection from the power that is contained in those higher levels. Right? The Zohar, by the way, also treats Moses as the husband of the Shekhinah. There's this phrase which we find once in Deuteronomy and once in the Psalms, which refers to Moshe as Ish Ha-Elohim. Now, usually we translate Ish Ha-Elohim as man of God, but it can also mean husband of God. So the Kabbalists, of course, just love that. That's terrific. And then, the idea that Moses is delighting in all. So it just gives that a little bit of an erotic tinge to all this. So that is a recurring theme in this text. And I'm hoping that in the next lesson we're going to deal with the role of the erotic more broadly in Jewish mysticism. So now look at the response of Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Chia. This is how typically rabbis are supposed to respond to mystical wisdom. Right? Now they recognize that this guy is one of those concealed holy people who contains mystical wisdom. Right? And he makes clear that what he said is just the beginning. Right? And he's very sad because so few human beings actually turn toward the wisdom of the Torah. Even though Torah calls out to them every day, it is cooing, right? Oh, like a lovebird, right? But people are not aware. They're just, they're not focused on it. They don't hear it. They're deaf to it. If they would know her and recognize her, if they would apply their energies and focus on the Torah, she would reveal herself even more. Right? So that's a little bit about this part of the text. Questions or comments up to here?
I don't want to kick this horse to hamburger, but I am.
Go ahead, Daniel. You would not be the first.
Particularly when you talked about the erotic overtones to the delight that Moses had going up the mountain into the cloud with a woman's clothing on.
With a woman's what?
With women's clothing on. That strikes me as really, really odd that the story is that Moses took the clothes from a woman and put them on and went up to cleave with God.
Yes, and some commentators have said that this suggests that Moses is feminized before God.
So that's not a crazy idea of
Well,
mine. Well, it may be, but it may be crazy of me, but it was also crazy of somebody else before me.
Yes.
Okay.
I think you'll appreciate that better after our next lesson. And we're definitely going to get to, I'm going to do that one right after we finish this one.
Okay, I will put that on my back shelf then.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right to raise it because, it sure does sound strange.
Okay, I will let you proceed with your lecture.
Thank you. Yeah, but just, you have to be prepared for the strange in this text. Okay. So here we go, back to the text. And here it is. Okay. This may be compared to a beloved maiden, beautiful in form and appearance, concealed secretly in her palace. She has a single lover, unknown to anyone except to her, in concealment. Out of his love for her, this lover passes by her gate constantly, lifting his eyes to every side. Knowing that her lover is constantly circling her gate, what does she do? She opens a little window in her secret palace, reveals her face to her lover, then swiftly withdraws, concealing herself. None of those near the lover sees or notices, only the lover, and his inner being and heart and soul follow her. He knows that out of love for him, she revealed herself for a moment to arouse him. So it is with the word of Torah. She reveals herself only to her lover. Torah knows that he who is wise of heart circles her gate every day. What does she do? She reveals her face to him from the palace and beckons him with a hint, then swiftly withdraws to her hiding place. None of those there knows or notices. He alone does. His inner being and heart and soul follow her. Thus, Torah reveals and conceals herself, approaching her lover lovingly to arouse love with him. Okay, so if you go all the way back to the third riddle, one about the beautiful maiden without eyes. Why is she without eyes? Because no one except maybe her lover has seen her. Right? The idea of the Torah as a hidden princess within a palace is found in rabbinic literature, but it also fits well in medieval Spain, right? Do any of you associate to one of those medieval stories? Does this sound familiar to any of you? This, the woman in a castle separated from her lover?
Well, I'm not going to go there because I've read the chapter.
Yeah, I have two questions, Rabbi. One, real quick. Is what we're reading right now in your book? If I were to take your book, could I find it?
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, I forget the exact characters, but there is a passage, biblical passage, I believe, prophets maybe, where a man is watching a woman bathe.
David and Bathsheba.
David and Bathsheba, thank you. And for some reason, it's told from the perspective of the man watching her, but this almost strikes me like a very similar story, only told from the woman's perspective. She is allowing her lover David to glimpse her briefly. That's what I thought of. There was no medieval story that I thought of, though.
Uh-huh. Okay, so the medieval story that you might associate with this is the story of Rapunzel, right? Who eventually lets down her hair in order to enable the person to make their way up to her, right? But instead of a prince, the hero of the story is the mystic who, pays close attention to her, and he understands when the Torah gives him a glimpse of the hidden mysteries. And in this story, the mystic, the one who yearns for Torah, is the one who is seduced by this beautiful maiden. Okay, other comments or questions here?
A little off the immediate subject, but
Sure, Lou.
Was Rashi a mystic?
Not particularly in the way that we think of. Rashi is, much more interested in the intellectual side of Judaism, less on the experiential side, right? It's not that he denies mystical experience. He's much more of what we would call into normal mysticism, all right? So, you say a bracha or you study a Torah text and you're reminded of God's presence, right? But you don't necessarily have an intense experience of the presence, at least not usually.
His commentaries don't show mysticism.
No, not particularly. They don't deny it either, but they just don't emphasize it. Okay. Other questions or comments?
Rabbi.
Yes, please.
Okay, the cloud, what it represents?
So the cloud, is the place where things are hidden, right? So if you have these higher sfirot, higher mystical understandings of Torah, that's where they are kept. They're kept up in the cloud in realms that are hidden from most of us. So if you want to get at them, you have to be really determined.
Thank you.
Right? Anyone else? Okay, so going on. Come and see. This is the way of Torah. At first, when she begins to reveal herself to a human, she beckons him momentarily with a hint. If he perceives, good. If not, she sends for him, calling him simple. Tell that simple one to come closer so I can talk with him. As it is written, whoever is simple, let him turn here, he who lacks understanding. As he approaches, she begins to speak with him from behind a curtain she has drawn, words suitable for him, until he reflects little by little. This is drasha. Then she converses with him from behind a delicate sheet, words of riddle, and this is Haggadah. Once he has grown accustomed to her, she reveals herself to him face to face and tells him all her hidden secrets, all the hidden ways concealed in her heart since primordial days. Then he is a complete man, husband of Torah, master of the house, for all her secrets she has revealed to him, concealing nothing. She says to him, did you see the hinting word with which I beckoned you at first? These are the secrets. This is what it is. And then he sees that one should not add to these words or diminish them. Then, pshat of the verse, just like it is. One should not add or delete even a single letter. So, human beings must be alert, pursuing Torah to become her lover. So here we see, the kind of expansion of meaning of Torah. The student is taught drasha, the typical homiletical interpretation of the Torah, an imaginative view of the Torah. And then at the next level, he is taught Agadah, meaning here allegory, right? Another way of interpreting Torah. Eventually, he learns everything that was concealed since primordial days, right? Before creation. He becomes complete. Now he knows all of the sod, the hidden meaning of the Torah, all the stuff that was concealed from before creation. And so he knows now all the mysteries of the Torah that he could never have gotten before. She takes off all of her adornments, right? So there, go back, the riddle that deals with adornments that are not, okay? So now she's taken off those adornments. He experiences revelation without any obstacle. He understands the sod, the mystical meaning of the Torah. And so he becomes a Baal Torah, a husband of the Torah. Baal Torah would idiomatically be translated as a master of the Torah, a scholar. But here they interpret the word Baal literally. Baal means husband. And what does it mean if you're a husband? So you have total access to the wife. Right? It's not just knowledge, it's also power. The Torah, the Zohar tells us elsewhere, whoever engages in Torah has no fear of the mishaps of the world. He is protected above and protected below. He binds all the demons of the world and sends them down to the depths of the great abyss. That sounds like pretty good power. Right? That sounds like being able to do a lot more with what you've accomplished. So it's not just about access, it's also about having some power with that higher level of knowledge. Now the pshat, the simple meaning of the text, right? That's normally the first level of interpretation. But the verb pshat can also mean to strip. You can't add to or subtract from the words of the Torah. That's what the Torah itself says. But the pshat is still just the beginning. And you strip layers of meaning. And ultimately you come to love the inner meaning of the Torah. You never lose the pshat of a verse, right? But the text still acquires infinite levels of meaning. And that's, part and parcel of what the mystic experiences as closeness with God. It's almost as if there is no boundary between the mystic and God. And now he knows why you can't strip anything from the Torah, because every detail, every connection with the higher realms gives him a closer glimpse of God. Questions or comments up to here? Yes, Lou.
The Agadah, is that equivalent to the Remez of Pardes?
Yes.
Okay. The striptease.
I didn't quite understand that question.
Okay, so what Lou is referring to is the 4 levels of interpretation of the Torah.
Okay.
Okay? So Remez is considered like level 3. You have Pshat, that's number 1. You have Drash, that's number 2. Some people put Remez, or what's referred to here as Haggadah, as number 3. And then Sod, the mystical level of meaning, that's number 4.
And so which one, Lou, were you referring to that the answer was yes?
I learned some time ago that the word Pardes is an acronym for Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. And Rabbi Horwitz is using the word Haggadah and not Remez, but they're essentially equivalent here in those levels.
That's correct.
All right,
Okay.
go on with your question then, Lou. I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure I got that before.
All right. Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah. So the teasing and the strip tease, like Gypsy Rose Lee.
Yeah.
The strip teasers never get to the end. They get so far and never uncover everything. So the phrase here, all her hidden secrets and all the hidden ways, are those ultimately really exposed, or are we just getting closer? Wouldn't some of those be kept from humans?
All right. Here's my take on that. Just out of my experience. This is likened to intimacy between man and wife, right? In a relationship between man and wife, you may never totally understand the opposite, the other person.
I don't.
Now, I'm sure I don't, right? It's not as if there's a barrier, but there are still things that are, that we don't necessarily comprehend 100%. I don't know that my wife has necessarily any secrets from me, but maybe there are things that she just doesn't express, right? And so I can never have 100% understanding. Same way with the mystic and God, right? You couldn't have 100% because that would be to be in complete union with God, even more than an experience of prophecy. The prophet who receives that experience doesn't become God. The prophet simply is given a taste of God's will and wisdom and word. And so, same thing here. It feels like union with God. It's not total union.
So there's still some things that
there are mystical experiences which are described as if they are complete union with God. We're going to come to that in the lesson after the next one, which we may or may not get to in June. We'll see.
All right, I have one more, and that's the protected above and protected below phrase. I kind of can sort of wrap my brain around protected above. But I wonder, oh, no, the other way around. I can understand being protected below from earthly things, but why would someone have to be protected from above?
Because the higher up you go, the closer you get to the power, the more dangerous it is. And I go back to, my age-old question here, would you like to have the power plant built in your backyard? Right? You don't want to be that close to the power. I'm Lou, it's perfectly safe. We're just building this wonderful, powerful system in your backyard. We need your backyard. Right? But you're not really comfortable with having all that electricity sitting in your backyard.
Okay.
As an analogy, in the backyard of our lot on Academy, where they're building a new house, there's this pole that is bent. It's at, I would say, maybe an 80-degree angle, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. All right? It looks like it's going to fall. I don't know if it's ever going to fall or not, but we've told Centerpoint, you really need to get out there and do something, because otherwise, sooner or later, you're likely to have an outage or worse. Right? Last thing I want is for that pole to fall and hit our roof, right? Our brand new roof, right? Okay, so I am very respectful of the power in that pole. I would like to be protected from it. I'd like to have Centerpoint get out there and fix it so that it is secure, 90-degree angle, firmly rooted in the ground, etc. Right? I want to be protected from the possible consequences. I'm ready to go live in the house, but I'm going to be nervous as long as I see that pole that's bent back there. Okay? Other questions or comments here? Okay, let's go back to the text. And again, the sage is talking here, the donkey driver. He was silent for a moment. The comrades were amazed. They did not know if it was day or night, if they were really there or not. Enough, comrades, he says. From here on, you will know that the evil side has no power over you. I, Yeva Sava, have stood before you to arouse these words. They rose like one awaking from sleep and prostrated themselves before him, unable to speak. After a while, they wept. Rabbi Chia opened and said, set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. Love and sparks of flame of the heart will follow you. May it be God's will that our image be engraved in your heart as your image is engraved in ours. He kissed them and blessed them, and they went. And when they rejoined Rabbi Shimon is the head of this group, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, And they told him all that happened. He was delighted and amazed. He said, "How fortunate you are to have attained all this. Here you were with a heavenly lion, a mighty warrior compared with whom many warriors are nothing, and you did not recognize him right away. I wonder how you escaped being punished by him. The Holy One, blessed be he, must have wanted to save you." Okay, so
I'm getting confused as to who's who here. I'm sorry. Yeva Sava, are we supposed to know who that is?
he's the
Donkey.
donkey driver. He's the one who's doing all this mystical teaching.
Right, but what does Yeva Sava mean? Is that his name?
So I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Sava means elder. All right?
Grandfather.
Kind of, yeah. Now, the name Yeva Sava, I don't know exactly what the name Yeva means, but Yeva Sava was a relatively minor figure in the Talmud who lived in the 3rd century. If Shimon Bar Yochai, who lived in the 2nd century, is, put in as the purported author of this whole text, so the Zohar introduces another historical figure and places this Kabbalistic wisdom in his mouth, just like many of the Hechalot texts did back when we were looking at those texts in lesson, 4? Okay. Okay, so back to Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Chia, who don't even know if it's day or night. They're just captivated with this wisdom. It's as if they are transformed. It's as if they don't even know if they're really there or not. I wonder where they thought they were. Right? Maybe they're in the Yeshiva Shalmala, right? The heavenly academy of Torah, right? Because where else are you going to get this kind of wisdom? Right? But from heaven. And so Yeva Sava concludes by telling them, the power of my teaching will protect you. The evil side has no power over you. So when the Torah is viewed in this way, study of Torah is also potentially a mystical experience, not just an intellectual experience. It's a way of gaining insight into God. Also, mystical experience generates interpretations of the Torah, which then become part of mystical texts. So the Kabbalists, although they dealt with some very erudite and theoretical issues, they themselves believed that their mysticism was mainly experiential and not stuff that was written down. Now, that doesn't mean that the story of this text actually happened, but it might have been something that came out of a mystical experience, and the rabbi is describing that. So knowing that, you may better understand how to read this text. The verse that Rabbi Chia cites here, the verse from Song of Songs, set me as a seal upon your heart, here in the middle. Right? This is used to express the love between Knesset Israel, the assembly of Israel, which is associated with Shekhinah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, associated with Tiferet. And so with that image, and there's also a brief Torah teaching, which I didn't include here, that Rabbi Chia blesses Yeva Sava, and Yeva Sava in turn blesses them, and he leaves. And then Rabbi Shimon gets the report of all this and he says, yeah, man, you survived this encounter? You came back from this, right? You were in the presence of a supernal lion, could have eaten you alive. But God must have wanted to spare you. Okay. So to wrap up this piece, we have about 5 minutes left. And I want to just mention that this text is so rich and includes so many different aspects and principles of Jewish mysticism. From the appearance of the donkey driver and his subsequent, revelation as a lion, a mystical lion, right? We're reminded of one of the key principles in Jewish mysticism, which is that what is apparent is not necessarily real. The apparent is not the real. What we see, what we experience is not necessarily the way it is. Right? Mystical experience is a key to seeing the higher level of reality. Another thing, what's the job of the mystic? The job of the mystic is to get through that apparent reality and to see the part that is concealed. Right? And because we discussed the 4 levels of interpretation of Torah, that the highest level of understanding is the sod, the mystical interpretation. That is what provides access to God. That is what provides the mystic with an experience of dveikut, a real feeling of cleaving to God. The mystical understanding of Torah also includes multiple levels of meaning, many different symbols, lots and lots of code language. Okay? Another thing, most of us experience God as being very removed from us, right? But the gap is an illusion. Like the gardens to the maiden, the garments, in the woman in the tower, not separated from us, right? Once, when we get there, we see that the gap is an illusion, right? And so is the distance between God and us, right? And another thing, mystical experience is meant to change us. It is meant to transform us. Through mystical experience, we reach a certain level of what we tend to call higher consciousness. And if you master the right techniques, you can do it, right? So that's what those are just some of the aspects that make this text so rich and so much a real classic in terms of what it shows about Jewish mysticism in general, and not only the text of the Zohar. Any comments or questions here?
Yes.
Yes, Lou.
So the sentence about the gap between humankind and God being an illusion, that the gap really is kind of small, but would it be correct to look at it as a very complex maze where point A is on one side of a line and point B, God is on the other side of a line, but to get there, you've got to travel this great distance and you're going to hit a lot of dead ends and have to back up.
That is one way potentially to look at it. I think the more accurate way to look at it as it is presented here is to see that line which separates you from God in the maze as an illusion. That line is not really there. It only appears to be there.
But you've got to go through a lot of steps to get there. You've got a lot of garments that you have to strip off.
Yes, yes. But ultimately, you come to the understanding that it's just an illusion.
This is beginning to remind me of The Matrix,
The Matrix.
the movie. The movie.
I'm sorry to say that I never saw that movie.
I saw it and never understood it.
That's another one. Yeah. All right, everybody, we'll leave it for here for this week. Thank you very much, and we'll carry on next week.
Thank you.
Thank
Rabbi.
you.
All right, Shavua Tov, everybody.